One, thank you all for being here. I will call our special meeting. We're a special meeting tonight again, Chris, aren't we? Yes.
Yes, we are.
A special meeting of our Town Plan and Zoning Commission to order. It is Thursday, September 9th at about 6:35 p.m. So for the record, I'm Rob Klee. I'm the chair of our Woodbridge Town Plan and Zoning Commission. I'm pleased to have with me tonight Larry Greenberg and Jeff Kennedy, Andrew Skolnick, and Kathy Hunter. So we have a quorum. Chris Sullivan, thank you as always for your support and your through all these processes. As I've gotten now used to saying way too many times, we are operating this meeting under the auspices of the governor's executive orders and the efforts to prevent the spread of coronavirus. So we thank all those who might be listening in for their patience with the technology, and thank you. Our only item on our agenda tonight is to hold our public hearing and take appropriate action on the proposed amendments to our zoning regulations regarding accessory dwelling units and expansion of housing opportunities in the GBA zone. So the agenda and materials have been available on the town website. So we are now, I guess, opening or continuing a public hearing that we've had over the last few weeks, but we will likely conclude our public hearing today. So I believe this is when I would make a reminder as we move into the public hearing portion to the public, if there are any. The purpose of our public hearing is to listen to comments, and anyone who wishes to speak will have up to 3 minutes for brief statements to be entered into the record. Chris, we've also had open a written, the ability for folks to write in and send email comments to you.
That is correct, and we have received none. We should note that we did also send this off to the policy board of the Regional Council of Governments, and we received their comments. Those were posted and distributed to you, and they found that there was no adverse impact on adjoining municipalities or Long Island Sound.
Great. Thank you, Chris. To the extent there are members of the public, just a reminder that if that this is an opportunity for comment, but our TPZ members will not be answering questions in case there are any. And the public statements and any written comments are part of the public record for these proposed amendments. And as a general reminder, which is just good practice to do, it's inappropriate to have off the record communications with members of our commission on the merits of this proposed change to our regulations. Those types of off the record ex parte communications are prohibited. So I'm looking at our participants and attendee list, and I don't see any. I see Joe Crisco, who's our designee from the Board of Selectmen, but I don't see any other members of the public with us tonight. Is that correct, Chris?
That is correct.
Okay, so I will hold it open for just a few more minutes, just in case someone does log in. If that's okay with folks.
Say about 5 minutes or so or longer, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, let's do to, if it's okay with folks, to 6:45. That'll sort of give people 15 minutes to find the link and log
Sure.
in. And so 6:45. So appreciate folks' patience. I will go on mute.
And just so everyone knows, I'm also monitoring my email. So if anybody for some reason right now decides to send an email in, I can see that. But we have received no comments either via the mail or via email.
Thank you, Chris, for doing that. So if we could rejoin, um, Chris, I don't think anyone else has come into the meeting.
No, I've seen no one, and I just rechecked emails and I have nothing.
Great, thank you. Do we need a motion to close the public hearing or?
Normally, we formally do, yes.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to close our public hearing on the proposed amendments to our zoning regulations. Andrew, you were muted, but you raised your hand.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of closing our public hearing, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? So thank you, Chris. We have closed our public hearing, and now I believe we can move into our deliberations over the proposed amendments that are in front of us. And
We should formally seat Kathy in place of probably Paul or someone.
okay. Chris, remind me how I formally do that, other than to say that
You're
Kathy.
chair, so you can just say you're seating her in place of Paul Skolnick, or
Paul Schatz.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, Paul Schatz, who's excused from this evening's meeting.
So I am formally seating Kathy Hunter in place of Paul Schatz, who is excused from this meeting tonight. Thank you, Kathy.
Great.
So I might propose that we take up so there are two, as we said earlier, there are two proposed amendments. One is to our zoning regulations, section 3.3 CC, on accessory dwelling units to conform with recent changes in statute. That one may have more conversation, I'm guessing, than the other one, which is simply an extension of the work we've done to modify our zoning regulations over the past year to just add apologies, the GBA zone. So if folks agree, would we like to just see if there's any questions or reactions to the GBA zone addition at this time? I'm not seeing any. So, Chris, is it okay if I just entertain a motion to adopt the changes add the GBA zone to our prior uh, broader changes to our opportunity housing?
Yes, you just need to note that you find that they're in conformance with your town plan of conservation and development, and you also need to provide an effective date.
Okay. So the motion would include both a recognition that these changes are in. So how about I'll do the motion because I'm already talking. I move to approve the proposed amendments to the GBA zone to reflect the expansion of housing opportunities, which we have determined are in accordance with the plan of conservation and development. And Chris, I'm sorry, was there something else?
We need an effective date.
And an effective date.
You can
Chris,
do October 1st if you want.
with an effective date of October 1st. So I've moved those amendments to the GBA zone. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Andrew. Any further discussion or comment amongst our commission members? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And no abstentions either. So thank you. So Chris, is that what you need for that piece?
That's what I needed for that one. Yep.
Great. So do we want to make a motion yet on the accessory dwelling units, or is it better to just sort of open up to sort of discussions and questions about whether the language we have, which I can, Chris, can I share my screen?
Yeah, I can certainly.
Whether the language we have conforms to the statute.
You. Oops. Hang on a sec. It's been a while since I've done this. You the host. I've made you the host, and that should give you screen sharing privileges.
Okay.
So I don't have a little ball here to pass to. Or I can also make you a presenter.
Maybe make me a presenter because it is asking me to share files, which I don't
Oh, okay.
want to.
Hang in a sec. So. Okay. So now you're a presenter.
Great. Okay. So I'm sharing. Okay, it's a little, all my screens have gone a little funny, but are folks seeing the proposed amendments, the one page?
Yes.
Which has the text in red. So I'll open it up to commission members to see if they have sort of questions, thoughts on the language. I can also share the language of the act as well, which I have teed up elsewhere, if that's helpful.
Mr. Chairman, I did have a quick question. It says net floor area of not less than 30%. Would it be not less than, or would it be not more than 30%?
No, not less than. That's what we had discussed, I think, and let me just read it again.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, and on this one, I can also bring up, if folks would like me to, the text of the statute, where I think this language, Chris, if I'm not mistaken, was copied directly from the statute. It is a couple of double negatives in there, which is wonderful statutory writing. But,
That would be my problem, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. When you read letter A all together, as Andrew goes through it carefully, I got a little bit confused. So I just want to, I think I know what it's saying. I just want to make sure it says it.
and would folks like me to bring up the statute as well? Is that helpful or no?
I think so.
So I think this is coming from this language that I'll go back up to the top. So this is this section about zoning regulations that shall uh, ensure that at least one accessory apartment shall be allowed as of right on each lot that contains the single family dwelling. Um, and again, this all starts with zoning regulations shall, and then you jump down to 3. So zoning regulations shall set a maximum net floor area for an accessory apartment of not less than 30% of the net floor area of the principal dwelling, or 1,000 square feet, whichever is less.
So that would necessarily mean then that a um a dwelling of a certain de minimis square footage would not be able to accommodate an accessory dwelling unit. Is that what it says? If it
So
has to be at least 350 square feet at a minimum. Oh, and then not less than 30%. So as long as it's not more than 1,000 feet, it can be equal to the size of the dwelling unit by this language.
I don't know. So let's say you have a 1,500 square foot house.
Let's say you have a 900 square foot house.
I was
That's
gonna I was gonna get to that one in a moment. But I'll start with a 1,500 square foot house. So this would say that if you wanted, you have a right to do an accessory dwelling unit that has to be at least 350 square feet. But by this calculation, 30% of the 1,500, and whoops, I made the math a little harder than I thought. Today I'm going to call myself a lawyer, not a scientist, but um, so you your maximum floor area.
be 1,000 and the minimum 500.
No, because but it says whichever is less. So 30%. So if the maximum floor area can be not less than 30% of the net floor area, which
I
450
guess
feet.
what I
450
what I
square
don't
feet.
understand is what's the purpose of the last 3 words, whichever is less.
So in
It
this
makes sense
particular
without that.
case, because the house is smaller, it's 450 feet.
Right. So in a 1,500 square foot house,
But if
this
you
is
had a house that was 6,000 square feet, it would be a maximum of 1,000 square feet for an accessory dwelling unit. Because that would
Okay.
be less than the 30% of the 6,000 square feet, which would be 2,000 square feet, or no, 3, 6,
yeah. So this
1,800 square feet.
So I think Chris is right. This is setting a ceiling. So our band would be your accessory dwelling unit has to be at least 350 square feet. And in this 1,500 square foot example of a house, your not accessory dwelling unit can't be 1,000 feet. It'll trigger it's between 350 and frankly 450 square feet. 450 being 30% of the 1,500 of your primary dwelling. But then Chris is right. If you had a 6,000 square foot home, you're looking at that 1,000 square foot maximum is the upper bounds because 30% of 6,000 square feet is 1,800 feet. The 30% versus
I get
a
it now.
third, yeah.
I get it.
It's been thrown it. So but back to, and I'll jump back to our proposed amendments. I think this is in conformance. The language is copied and pasted. Um, so other questions or reactions?
I did have a comment on line B where it says one of the occupants of the dwelling shall be the owner of record. Um, I know the state act prohibits requiring a family relationship, and I don't know if that's what it's speaking to, but I'm not really sure what that's speaking to. I'm just confused as to what that means.
And that's actually, Kathy, a great question. And it may go back to folks who were involved in the history when this was written. Um, I'm a little concerned about that line as well. Um, does it basically requires a separate, either the
I
owner.
think the dwelling means the
Yeah,
house itself,
which,
so
which dwelling does that refer to? The principal dwelling or the accessory dwelling?
that's how I take it. The dwelling is the principal
I can so-
house,
So what
so
they're
that's why that's okay.
the original discussion, I believe, was that there weren't going to be two rental units in this facility. That
Right.
there
So
was
that-
going to
that
be an
def-
owner of record in the main dwelling, and then they would have an accessory dwelling unit.
So
For
maybe we
whomever.
should add the word principal before the word dwelling in B.
Yeah, we should define dwelling because I'm confused. If it was talking about the accessory dwelling or the primary dwelling.
And Andrew, further on, we do have the term expansion of a principal dwelling in F, and the principal dwelling and accessory dwelling unit shall conform. So I think this does say that one of the occupants of the principal dwelling
Has to be an owner.
shall be the owner of record of the accessory dwelling unit.
No,
No.
of the principal dwelling. The owner of the principal dwelling is necessarily the owner of the accessory dwelling.
Right, but I'm trying to, should we add that clarifying language to the end of B, that so B might then read, one of the occupants of the principal dwelling shall be the owner of record of the accessory dwelling.
No, because I don't think that's the meaning of that provision. I think it's just saying that you can't not live in your house and rent out an accessory dwelling on your property. You have to occupy the principal dwelling, the owner. Not that an owner has to live in the accessory, that the owner of record has to live in the accessory dwelling.
Okay, so I think I'm understanding that this is in essence saying that the owner of the principal dwelling
Shall be the
has to live in the principal dwelling.
one of the occupants of the principal dwelling shall be the owner of record. So you can't have non-owners of record living in the house at the same time as having an occupied accessory dwelling on your lot.
So basically, you can't rent the principal dwelling and not have the owner of record a resident in the principal dwelling.
Right.
So the owner of record could not live in the accessory unit and rent out the main unit.
I don't know that that's no,
That's the
you
question.
could not, Larry, absolutely not. And I mean, there could be more than one owner of record. So technically, one could live in the principal and one in the accessory, but at least one owner of record has to live in the principal dwelling in order to have an occupied accessory dwelling unit.
Although excuse me, a question there. Let's say a scenario where you're a you're a parents, senior parents owning a larger house, and you build yourself a grandparents accessory dwelling unit and have your kids move in to
Can't do that.
the primary.
You can't do that. You can quit claim the principal dwelling to your kids if you want to do that.
Is there a policy reason for that, do you think, Andrew?
Yes, but I don't know what it is.
I never knew that because we talked about doing that ourselves. My own place.
Yeah, and so I guess what's the question is, do we need to have that restriction?
Well, does that come from the statute as well?
No.
No, the statute, if anything, and I'll bring up the statute language on this part. Think it's the only place that the things that you're not allowed to. So everything else was a for accessory dwelling units. You shall do this. You shall provide for the height and landscaping. The setbacks. I'll dial it back from the beginning. Apologize for scrolling. So when you're developing these zoning regulations on accessory dwelling units, we shall designate that this is something that can be done as of right on single family, on lots that with single family dwellings. The accessory apartments can be allowed to be attached or detached, which is something that we edited in our rules. We went over the net floor area, so it shall have those maximum floor area requirements. It shall have the setbacks and lot sizes and et cetera that are equal to that that is required of the principal dwelling. All the other standards to the single family dwellings on landscaping and height and design apply. And then the 6 is where the shall then becomes you shall be prohibited from doing these things. So back to our double negative. So we cannot require a passageway. We cannot require an exterior door except as required by the fire code. We cannot require more than one parking space.
How can you not require a passageway, by the way? There has to be a border between the principal dwelling and the accessory dwelling. And by necessity, any way you get from one to the other is a passageway.
It's a great question. I don't know what was intended by this language. Whether it's if you have an accessory dwelling unit that's a separate and attached, either over a garage or in place of a garage type of dwelling unit. I was reading that as you can't require that you need a breezeway, a connection, or something. But that's my definition of passageway versus a definition of passageway that, yeah, you need it to be an actual separate unit, which would have a door, and a door is a passageway between the apartment and the principal dwelling.
Yep.
But again, which is, I think, what Kathy was mentioning here, you cannot require a familial, marital, or employment relationship between occupants of the principal dwelling and the accessory apartment. So that cannot be required. So I don't think there was anything.
So to address the concern for the lack of public policy behind B, what if we said one of the occupants of the principal dwelling or or accessory dwelling must be the owner of record.
I like that.
I would agree.
I like that.
So that's just a requirement that you, in essence, can't be renting both the principal dwelling and the accessory dwelling at the same time. One of them has to have someone who's an owner of record in it, but we don't care which one.
Right.
It could be the smaller unit or the larger unit. Kathy, your reactions to that?
I mean, I just thought the line should just be deleted. I'm not sure, is that what we want to do? We want to require a occupant in one of the units at all times?
Yes, I
There-
think it is what we want to do because we don't want an absentee landlord.
Okay.
And Andrew, can you go a little further on why um, we want to have? I mean, people can rent their houses, their single-family houses now. Why wouldn't we? What is the delta or the difference between someone who's, you know, who's, has moved to Florida but still, rents their house here in Woodbridge to faculty at Yale, which I know actually there's quite a few folks who are visiting.
Only that this is a different animal.
Because
Something
there are
that-
two units.
because
now.
there are two units, one of which is accessory to the other. That you wouldn't otherwise be able to rent two dwelling units out of a single family home without the allowance of an accessory dwelling unit that meets the other requirements of the code.
I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it should be allowable if you want to rent out your home and the accessory unit. I mean, it's just providing more housing opportunities, and I think that's what we're trying to get at. But um, I just think it's just you're just kind of restricting housing options. That's the way I see it. I don't see what the problem is renting a primary dwelling and a ADU at the same time.
It's a way to get around the requirements that we place for two-family homes.
You have no requirements on occupation of a two-family home by a homeowner.
Exactly, exactly the point. But we do with accessory buildings as opposed to a two-family home.
So I think, Larry, can you expand on that a little more? Because if we don't have a restriction on two-family homes, where you could have in that two-family home situation a owner of that and who's renting both
When we
units.
when we passed the accessory dwellings, it was for an accommodation to the owner of the property so that grandparents or children or whatever can have the accessory building. We didn't intend for those to be two-family buildings. The building code may be totally different for the two families like we passed back in June. And if we allowed both units to be rented by someone that was not an owner, it would be giving them the privilege of a two-family home without the building code that pertains to two families.
So what is the standard of review for an accessory dwelling unit application Is it site plan review? Is it special exception? Is it as of right? Because the two-family home, as I recall, are subject to site plan application,
Oh.
which would,
Only if it's public sewer, no,
no,
only if it's not public sewer and public water. So
if
if
it's
it's
anywhere
a
within the watershed.
two-family and has public water and sewer, it's just a zoning permit.
Yeah, but if it's anywhere within the public watershed, it's a site plan
Then
review.
it's a special exception.
For,
And if it's out of the public water supply watershed, it's a site plan if there's no public water and sewer.
okay. So what's this? This is as of right?
So I'm looking in your use table, bear with me.
Well, and I think the act,
Accessory dwelling units are currently by zoning permit only.
correct, and I believe that's what the act contemplated as well. And for at least one accessory department shall be allowed as of right, which again, those should out there should help me, Chris or maybe Kathy. I believe that means as of right, meaning by zoning permit.
Right.
So I think I hear what the sort of the two sort of threads of thought. One, um, why not have a, if you have a right, of ownership, you can, rent your primary house, you can rent the accessory dwelling unit. That's fine. And then I think I'm hearing from Larry and Andrew that, well, that then basically, absorbs this into the world of a two-family house, which we have a separate process and for, and sort of undermines its nature as an accessory dwelling unit as something that accessory to the primary dwelling unit versus the processes we've set up for establishing two-family houses. Do we take a straw poll here on whether we would? So, and I think the evolution of the language in B got to the fact that one of the owner of record must occupy at least one of the dwellings, either the primary or the accessory.
That's what I'm in favor of.
I am as well.
And Larry,
I am as well.
and I am willing to have both units rented, the accessory and the primary. And Kathy, your opinion?
I agree. I think that the line should just be deleted, and I think it should be permissible to, rent both units, both dwelling units.
But it looks like it's two of us to three on this point.
Okay.
Unless anyone that we can convince to come to our side on this issue. Seeing none that are jumping our direction, so it looks like. And Chris, question whether I need us to formally vote on that, or we are.
No, that's just part of your discussion.
Okay, but it would have the clarifying language to be that, or B, that the one of the occupants of either the primary dwelling or the
Or
accessory
accessory dwelling unit, yes.
shall be the owner of record. Okay.
Yep. I think the other area of concern was with respect to the prohibition of a requirement of an exterior door. At least those were the questions that you raised, Chris.
I didn't raise
Initially.
Or
that. I
Kathy.
think
No, I didn't raise that one. I agreed with
I,
Chris's.
I'm,
I raised a couple more, but not that one.
Oh, no, I'm looking at the at a printout that I think, Chris, that you had emailed out originally asking for comments, and you asked two questions. Number one was, does 3.3.cc2D conflict with the House Bill number 716, page 13, lines 378 through 80 in B, which prohibits the requirement of an exterior door for any such apartment except as required by the applicable building or fire code? That was your first question.
so. If you go back to the screen you just had, Rob.
Mhm.
So
An
D states that an accessory dwelling unit shall be self-contained with a separate entrance.
But a separate entrance is not necessarily an exterior door.
Correct. So that would not appear to be in conflict with
That's my
the prohibition section of the act.
that was my view, and that was the note that I had made
Okay.
myself at the time you circulated this.
and I think I would agree with that too. That requiring a separate entrance does not mean that it has to be a
Exterior.
exterior door. The only place where an exterior sort of is implied is maybe in C, which seems to more get at sort of code issues where if your accessory dwelling unit is in a garage or basement, you need to be able to have one wall opening to grade, which seems to imply, Chris, that you would be exiting and entering on through that wall, but it doesn't quite
It
say it.
doesn't necessarily mean that. It could mean that there's, if you have a sleeping unit in a basement, you at least have to, under code, have a window which is egress accessible. So somebody with a fireman with a pack on could get in and out of that window or pull you out or whatever. So it's just a safety thing that if a bedroom is in a basement, that it has to have a egress window.
But the code doesn't require a stairwell or a door.
No, it just says an egress window. And quite truthfully, you can get an egress window without having one wall opening to grade. But well, that's not true, because you need it opening at some point to grade so that you can put that accessory window or that accessible window in.
Right.
Doesn't necessarily mean open to grade for the entire wall.
Right.
So is there any concern about either C or D as currently written?
Yeah, actually, that was one of the concerns I had where it says no accessory dwelling unit shall be located in a garage or basement. I just didn't understand why it wouldn't be permissible if you had a accessory dwelling unit over a garage.
But I don't think this refers to a unit above a garage. This is actually in a garage or a
Okay.
basement. And I think from what Chris just said, the code requires egress escape to grade, at least through a window.
And if you have sleeping quarters or whatever over a garage, there are other building code requirements that come into play about fire separation and everything else. So the act talks about having to meet building and fire code and all that other stuff. So
Yeah,
And I
and,
get-
and our subsection H
talks about it too.
includes that language.
Correct. And I guess, are we comfortable that C is clear enough that this is not a prohibition to accessory dwelling units?
I don't think it reads that it is,
Okay.
unless you ignore the last 6 words.
The opening to grade. You're quick on your word count. Unless one wall opens to grade. Kathy, does that help with your questions on
Yeah,
C?
I just, it wasn't clear. I thought when it said, no accessory dwelling unit shall be located in a garage. I just interpreted that as part of a garage, over a garage, but I didn't realize it meant just the garage portion of it. So that was
Yes.
just my misunderstanding of what that was.
Perfectly reasonable. And I have one of those houses where my garage actually is in my basement. So this actually had some resonance for me that yes, if I was going to convert that garage into an accessory dwelling unit, it would have to, it in essence, would have to conform to the rules about having sleeping areas in basements. Other questions or reactions to the language as proposed?
My last comment was on I, where it says, in no event shall there be more than 2 dwelling units on any parcel in a residential district. And since we did open up multi-family housing to some residential areas, I just didn't know that needed to be clarified.
Yeah, I guess it should have a few more words at the end of that sentence, unless the parcel is in a area serviced by public water and sewer.
Well, it could be simply that unless it's received an, what do we call it? Opportunity housing. What? I have the regs in front of me. For
As you're looking that up, Chris, is there
it
why
all
do we?
that's covered under 3.4 opportunity housing. That's where multifamily comes in.
Thank you, Chris, but I wonder why we need this in this section that's just focused on
Yeah,
the
it
the
could
rules
just
for
be
accessory
deleted
dwelling.
because there's other sections of the regs that
Yeah, just
cover
delete.
it.
Because I'm having trouble figuring out the exact combinations of succinct words to add to the end of
Yeah.
this. I think it might be easier.
It would
to
be a
just-
lengthy explanation we would have to include. I agree. I think if you strike it, it'll just be done.
Okay.
I agree.
So, and for editing purposes, that means H will be our last portion of this. And that means after the end of G, there should be an and to delete the and that's currently at the end of H.
Are we ready for a motion then?
I think we're pretty close. Anyone else have other comments or I I guess as a procedural matter, we have informally sort of gotten to the point on B where the new language will be one of the occupants of the principal dwelling or accessory dwelling unit shall be the owner of record. But that was a language that had two out of the three of us did not would have had different language. Do we
Yeah,
need
but-
a separate motion on that, or
No,
can we just have an overall?
I would envision a single motion with an up or down vote, which would include that proposed change. I don't think it needs to be done separately because we're in agreement on the other one unanimously about deleting I, which is the other change.
Okay. I think I understand that. Um,
But what if I wanted to go on record that I didn't agree with that particular one?
You just did.
Yeah, Kathy, you can always come back. I mean, this process doesn't stop. This is an ever-changing planning and zoning regs. I mean, if anybody has different points of view for different parts of the regulations, people can always come back and say, I want to change something. You do a public hearing, you go through it. I mean, that happens, all the time. So voting in favor of this motion, if it's a consolidated motion, if it's one motion, you vote in favor of it, doesn't mean that you don't want something to change in the future.
No, more to the point. I think you've made your objection to that proposed language clear in what you've stated already on the record.
yeah, but the voting record will just show that we all voted yes for this.
Yeah, but your minutes can show what Kathy needs to have shown.
Well, and I'm also on the
Yeah,
that side
both
as
of you, yes.
Kathy, your thoughts? Because we could have a specific motion on modifying B and a specific motion on deleting I.
No, I mean I'm fine. And again, I'm a newbie here. I'm learning, so I just, as long as it's on record, I didn't agree with that, and if it's reflected in the minutes, then I'm okay with that.
Okay, I'm okay with that too.
It will certainly be reflected in the minutes and more importantly, reflected in the reporting
Okay,
made of this meeting.
so thank you all. I will entertain then a motion to approve the proposed amendments to section 3.3.cc on 2 on accessory dwelling units with the edit to 2B to now read that one of the occupants of the principal dwelling or accessory dwelling unit shall be the owner of record. And in 2I, a deletion of 2I and some conforming language to recognize at the end of G, the insertion of an and. That is a very long motion to approve the amendments.
With the same effective date of October 1st and finding it in compliance
Yes.
with your town plan?
With the same effective date of October 1st and a finding that this is in compliance with the town plan of conservation development and also the recently passed statute to this regard. I will move that.
I will second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any further comment or discussion other than having the record reflect that Kathy Hunter and Rob Klee did not, whatever the right phrasing is, would have had other language on section B. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, it passes. Thank you all. And thank you for this discussion, and thanks for us all kind of wrapping our heads around this. I will stop my sharing.
Can we have a brief discussion with respect to some other business, something that was of concern a few weeks ago that I don't think has been discussed yet, unless I was the only one that received that email with attachment?
You may have been the only
The
one.
only thing that's on your agenda is what you just did,
Okay,
and it's a special meeting, so you can't add anything else.
okay, I won't.
Okay. Chris, anything else on our special meeting agenda? No.
No, you should have received notice of the cancellation of your regular meeting for next week so that you can all attend the FOI session, which will be held via WebEx, and you should be receiving invitations to that. So your next regular meeting will be on Monday, October 4th.
Okay,
But we do have apologies. Do we have another meeting though in September?
It
No,
would have been next week, but we canceled that because it conflicted with your FOI required meeting.
Thank you. I've had too many things that I'm trying to juggle on my calendar. So we're done for September.
You're done for September.
Thank you very much. A motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Thank you all. Thanks again, Chris, for your help. And everyone, nice to see you. And we'll see you again
I'll
next
keep you
month.
posted if you get to meet in person next time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.